Night after night, Elara Vance's ion mop glided across the polished chrome floors of Omnicorp's spire, her existence barely registered by the high-level executives who ran the city-state. A prodigy of the prestigious Lunar Academy forced to abandon her scholarship, she hid her mastery of formal Neo-Tokian behind a sanitation tech's uniform, silently watching the corporate world from its margins. When the enigmatic magnate Kaito Tanaka arrived for a make-or-break merger and spoke in his specific high-register dialect, watching the executives flounder with their glitchy AI translation apps and nervous smiles, no one expected the woman in the gray maintenance jumpsuit to respond with flawless, classical Neo-Tokian. In that electric moment, as stunned silence fell across the boardroom, everything changed. The invisible suddenly seen, the voiceless finding power, and a journey beginning with one sentence that would shatter every synth glass ceiling above her. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The story I have for you tomorrow is one you definitely don't want to miss. The maglev trams hummed far below as Elara Vance guided her ion mop across the obsidian-veined floor of Omnicorp Spire's 120th floor atrium. The night cycle was quiet, just how she liked it. Most of the executives had teleported to their high-rise penthouses hours ago, leaving behind empty synth-calf cups and the lingering scent of expensive bio-fragrance. At 32, Elara had perfected the art of invisibility. She moved through the prestigious Ethelberg skyscraper like a ghost, seen but not registered, heard but not listened to. Tonight, however, voices drifted from the slightly ajar door of Conference Room Omega. Elara slowed her movements, the mop's ionic field creating a gentle, humming sound as she worked closer to the doorway. "Tanaka's shuttle lands from Neo-Tokyo on Thursday," a tense male voice announced. "If we botch this meeting, kiss the merger goodbye." Another voice, female, sharp, cut in. "We won't botch it. I've researched their corporate protocols extensively." Elara recognized the second voice as belonging to Lyra, the senior analyst who never failed to drop her food wrappers directly onto the floor instead of the waste reclamation chute that stood mere inches away, always with a dismissive, "Sanitation will get it." Elara's jaw clenched. As the executives continued their discussion about the impending visit from magnate Kaito Tanaka, Elara absorbed every detail. A 200 billion credit investment, an AI translator module scheduled, the director insisting on impeccable presentations. She filed away the information automatically, though she wasn't sure why. It wasn't like anyone would ask her opinion. When the meeting concluded, Elara quickly moved her cart down the hall, pretending to focus on a stubborn scuff mark as the executives filed out. None of them looked her way. Dawn's artificial light was beginning its cycle over Sector Gamma when Elara's keycard unlocked the door to her modest hab unit. The place was small, but neat. Second-hand furniture arranged with care, the walls decorated with framed holographic maps of the off-world colonies. "You're late," came a sleepy voice from the couch. Kala, her 15-year-old niece, sat up with tousled hair and tired, cybernetically enhanced eyes. She was thin, too thin, and the blue light from her data slate cast shadows on her face. "Overtime," Elara explained, setting down her bag. "You been up all night again?" Kala shrugged, trying to figure out how to pay this. She held up a data chip that Elara recognized immediately, another notice from the Student Debt Collective. Though Kala's parents, Elara's sister and brother-in-law, had died in a shuttle accident 5 years ago, their educational debts remained, a digital ghost haunting their small family. Ilara took off her jacket and sat beside her. "We'll figure it out. We always do." She didn't mention the extra shifts she'd picked up, or the side gig translating old technical manuals for a data archaeologist. 14 years ago, after the shuttle disaster that took her sister and nearly took a younger Kala, she'd become expert at carrying burdens silently. Her own full-ride scholarship to the Lunar Academy, her ticket out, her dream, had been surrendered without complaint when Kala needed her full-time care after the accident. Some sacrifices you just made. Family was family. "Get some sleep," she told her gently. "I'll synth some breakfast later." Once Kala had shuffled off to her bedroom, Ilara pulled a worn book from her bag. The Neo-Tokian script flowed across the pages in elegant, complex characters. Her fingers traced the words as she read, her lips forming complex sounds with practiced ease. For 30 minutes, she wasn't a sanitation tech, but a scholar again, lost in the classical poetry of a forgotten Earth. Someone flash-clogged the executive nutrient dispenser. "Again," Jorich grumbled, adjusting his own cleaning uniform in the staff locker room the next evening. 10 credits says it was that Lara woman." Ilara smiled as she tied her hair back. "You're probably right." Jorich had worked at Omnicorp longer than anyone. 15 years of cleaning up after people who pretended not to see him. He was the closest thing Ilara had to a friend at work. "You know," Jorich said, watching as Ilara tucked her Neo-Tokian book into her locker, "you're too smart to be here." Ilara shrugged. "We're all just trying to pay the bills." "No, I mean it. I see you reading those off-world books. My cousin works 3 shifts and still can't master standard English. And here you are reading, what is that anyway?" "Classical Neo-Tokian poetry," Ilara said simply. Jorich shook his head in wonder. "See? Too smart." Before Ilara could respond, their supervisor poked his head in. "All hands in the main atrium in 10. The director wants to address the staff." The staff, apparently, meant everyone. Executives in tailored synth silk suits, alongside maintenance workers and sanitation techs. Ilara stood at the back, her ion mop and cart close at hand. The atrium gleamed under holographic sky ceiling light. At the center stood Director Valerius, a man who had never once looked Ilara in the eye, despite her cleaning his office 3 times a week for 2 years. "Ladies and gentlemen of Omnicorp," Valerius began, his voice echoing through the atrium. "Tomorrow marks a historic opportunity for our corporation. Kaito Tanaka, one of the wealthiest magnates in the Neo-Tokyo conglomerate, will be gracing us with his presence." Valerius continued, describing Tanaka's business empire, the potential investment, and the need for everything to be absolutely perfect. His gaze swept over the crowd of executives, lingering on Lyra, who stood straight-backed and attentive, her chrome-laced hair pulled into a severe bun. "This is not just a meeting," Valerius emphasized. "This is a cultural exchange. Tanaka represents old-world traditions combined with next-generation thinking. We must impress him at every turn." As the speech continued, Ilara quietly resumed her work, gliding her ion mop around the perimeter of the atrium, just feet from where Valerius stood. Not once did he acknowledge the cleaning staff, though his directive that everything must be spotless was clearly meant for them. When the gathering dispersed, Ilara found herself near the transport tubes beside Finn, a data tech who always greeted her with a nod. Unlike most, he at least seemed to register her existence. "Big day tomorrow," he said, pushing his augmented reality glasses up his nose. "Sounds like it," Ilara replied, surprised at being addressed. "They're in a panic about the translator AI," Finn added in a low voice. "The new dialect patch is glitching." Before Alara could respond, a transport tube arrived, and Finn stepped in with a small wave. The doors hissed shut, leaving Alara alone with her mop and a piece of information that tugged at her thoughts. That night, Alara dreamed of the Lunar Academy. The biodomes with their Earth fauna, the libraries with their endless data streams, her professors who had seen such promise in her. Xenolinguistics had been her passion. Alien languages, post-human cultures, history. She'd been fluent in 3 off-world dialects before she arrived, had picked up classical Neo-Tokian as a personal project. In the dream, she stood at a podium, presenting her research to a packed holoconference. But as she spoke, the audience began to dissolve, replaced by her niece, Kala, in a med bay, monitors beeping around her. The scholarship confirmation in her hand transformed into medical bills, then into an ion mop. She woke with a start, her alarm chiming softly. Another night cycle awaited. The day of Tanaka's visit arrived with a flurry of activity. Alara, having been called in for an early shift, watched from the sidelines as geoengineers installed temporary Zen gardens, robo-caterers set up elaborate molecular gastronomy displays, and security personnel conducted sweeps of the building, including the executive washroom, which Alara had already cleaned twice that morning. She overheard Lyra and another executive in an intense conversation. "The translation patch is still unstable," Lyra hissed. "Unstable? Today of all days!" "What are we going to do?" the other woman asked. "The director will have our heads if this goes wrong." "I've downloaded 3 backup translator apps to my data slate," Lyra replied. "Between those and standard English, we'll manage. It's not like Tanaka doesn't speak any English. He was educated at the London Consortium, for God's sake." They exited without noticing Alara in the supply closet. She continued stocking nutrient packs, her mind racing. A name from her past echoed in her thoughts. Kaito Tanaka. Why did it sound familiar beyond today's visit? Had she encountered it during her studies? There had been so many prominent families, so many connections between the academies and the off-world conglomerates. She pushed her cart toward the transport tubes. She passed Finn, who was setting up extra holo monitors in a conference room. "Morning, Alara," he greeted her. "Morning," she replied. A harried intern rushed past them, nearly colliding with Alara's cart. Finn steadied the young man with a hand on his shoulder. "Whoa there! Where's the fire?" "Sorry, I can't find conference room Epsilon," the intern gasped. "I have to set up the translation feeds." Alara pointed down the corridor. "Third door on the right, the one with the bamboo garden." The intern thanked her and hurried off. Finn gave Alara an appreciative nod. "Not everyone knows this place like you do," he said. "Thanks for helping him." It was a small moment, but the acknowledgement of her knowledge, of anything beyond her ability to clean, warmed Alara unexpectedly. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. By late afternoon, an unusual stillness had fallen over the building, the calm before the storm. Alara found herself assigned to atrium duty, keeping the already spotless floors immaculate. Then, at precisely 1600, the shimmering energy barrier of Omnicorp's spire slid open, and Kaito Tanaka strode in. The atrium fell silent as Kaito Tanaka entered, flanked by his entourage. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. Tall and distinguished in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit made of shimmering, self-cleaning fabric, he wore no traditional Neo-Tokian attire, yet carried himself with unmistakable cultural pride. Gold alloy cufflinks caught the light as he extended his hand to Director Valerius. Elara, positioned near a pillar with her ion mop, observed the scene with quiet attention. Tanaka's security detail scanned the room with augmented reality overlays, while his business associates followed with data slates and glowing portfolios. Outside, through the transparent walls, media drones swarmed, their flashes strobing as they captured the arrival of the magnate's private shuttle. A sleek black craft with diplomatic markings. "Mr. Tanaka," Valerius gushed, pumping the man's hand enthusiastically. "What an honor to welcome you to Omnicorp Spire." Tanaka nodded politely. "The pleasure is mine, Director Valerius. Your reputation precedes you." His standard English was impeccable, accented but clear. Yet something about the way his eyes assessed the room, taking in not just the executives but the security guards, reception drones, and yes, even Elara with her mop, suggested he missed nothing. As the group moved toward the transport tubes, Tanaka's gaze briefly met Elara's. A moment of curious assessment passed between them before he continued on, leaving Elara with a strange sensation of having been truly seen for the first time in this building. The initial meeting proceeded smoothly until a private message caused Valerius to visibly blanch. Elara, refreshing nutrient-infused water glasses in the conference room, glimpsed his wristcom screen. Translator AI offline. System crash. No patch until tomorrow. Valerius excused himself briefly, and Elara slipped out behind him, returning to her cart in the hallway. Through the partially open door, she could hear the growing tension. "While we wait for the director," Lyra said brightly, "perhaps I can show you our preliminary portfolio?" Tanaka nodded graciously, though his expression remained neutral. Lyra pulled out her data slate. "I've downloaded a very sophisticated translation app, just in case we encounter any language barriers." A subtle stiffening in Tanaka's posture was the only indication of his response to this somewhat condescending suggestion. His English, after all, had been perfect so far. Valerius returned, his smile too wide. "Slight change of plans. Our translation module has been delayed. However, we're fully prepared to proceed in English." Tanaka inclined his head. "Of course, though occasionally certain concepts are better expressed in one's native tongue." The meeting continued until a complex question about quantum investment structures arose. Tanaka turned to one of his advisors and spoke rapidly in his high-register Neo-Tokian, the formal musical sounds of the language filling the room. Lyra, eager to demonstrate preparedness, held up her slate. "Let me translate that for everyone." She tapped the screen and held it toward the Neo-Tokian contingent. The robotic voice that emerged butchered the pronunciation so badly that one of Tanaka's younger associates had to suppress a smile. "It says, you are concerned about the koi fish structuring?" Lyra frowned at her slate. "That can't be right." A tense laugh rippled through the room. Tanaka's expression remained pleasant, but a coolness had entered his eyes. "Capital structuring," he corrected in English. "Perhaps technology is not always the solution." The meeting grew increasingly awkward. Then Tanaka said something that made Elara freeze. In fluid, formal Neo-Tokian, he remarked to his advisor, "They prepared everything except understanding. They see the credits, but not the mind behind them." The executives laughed nervously, assuming it was a joke. Lyra's app translated it as, "The preparation is good. The credits and mind work together." Elara's hand stilled on the glass partition. That wasn't it at all. The mistranslation wasn't just wrong, it was potentially insulting if Tanaka believed they understood his actual words. Perhaps sensing the disconnect, Tanaka decided to test the waters. Looking directly at Valerius, He spoke a full paragraph in his dialect, formal, elegant, and deliberately complex. No one responded. Uncomfortable glances were exchanged. Lyra frantically tapped at her failing app. Without planning to, without even realizing she was going to speak, Elara turned toward the room and replied in perfect, classical Neo-Tokyon. Her voice was soft, but clear, her dialect formal and respectful. "You honor us with your wisdom, sir. You say that true partnership requires more than shared profit. It requires shared understanding, that we must not build on shifting sands, but on the solid ground of mutual respect and cultural intelligence. What would you do if you had a hidden skill that could save your bosses from embarrassing failure, but revealing it would upend your entire life?" Elara chose to speak, shattering her own invisibility. Is the risk of exposure worth the moment of truth? In that silence, her whole world was about to be remade. The room went completely silent. Every head turned toward the sanitation tech with the ion mop in her hands. Kaito Tanaka's eyes widened slightly, the only break in his composed demeanor. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Nayamu," he said. "Yes." Lyra recovered first. "Well, isn't that cute?" she laughed, the sound brittle. She must have memorized a phrase or two, very multicultural of our sanitation staff. But Tanaka was already rising from his chair, his attention fully on Elara. He addressed her again in Neo-Tokyon, this time with a more complex question about her background and training in the language. Elara responded fluently, explaining briefly that she had studied xenolinguistics at the Lunar Academy. Her dialect was not from memorized phrases, but was the result of years of dedicated study. Director Valerius stood frozen, his expression oscillating between embarrassment and calculation. The Neo-Tokyon magnate was now engaged in an animated conversation with a sanitation tech, while his senior executives looked on helplessly. "Ms." Tanaka paused, looking at Elara expectantly. "Vance," she supplied. "Elara Vance." "Ms. Vance," he continued in English for everyone's benefit. "Would you be willing to assist us as interpreter for the remainder of this meeting? It seems you are the most qualified person in the room." Lyra's face flushed crimson. "Director Valerius, surely we should wait for a professional AI module." "Ms. Vance appears to be quite professional," Tanaka interrupted smoothly. "Unless there is some objection to her participation." All eyes turned to Valerius, who looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant, but the calculation in his eyes had won out over the embarrassment. "No objection whatsoever," he said with a forced smile. "Elara, please, join us." And so, still wearing her gray sanitation uniform, Elara set aside her ion mop and took a seat at the gleaming conference table. She felt the weight of every stare, the incredulity from the executives, the barely concealed fury from Lyra, and the undisguised interest from Kaito Tanaka. As the meeting resumed, Elara translated with precision and cultural sensitivity. She captured not just the words, but the intentions behind them. The atmosphere transformed. What had been stilted became flowing and productive. Tanaka's team visibly relaxed, and even Valerius began to look genuinely pleased. After 2 hours, Valerius called for a short break. As the room cleared, Tanaka approached Elara directly. "Ms. Vance, I would appreciate a private word, if you have no objection." Valerius opened his mouth as if to protest, then thought better of it. "Of course. Use my office. It's just down the hall." Once alone in the director's expansive office, Tanaka switched back to Neo-Tokyon. "You studied at the Lunar Academy. he said. It wasn't a question. Elara's surprise must have shown on her face, because he smiled. I remember you. 5 years ago, there was a Hollow conference on conglomerate investment and intersystem education. You presented a paper on cultural intelligence in post-contact business negotiations. It was most impressive. To be remembered for who you could have been by someone who represents everything you lost. Is that a gift or a curse? It's a reminder of lost potential, but also a validation that her true self was real and had been seen, even long ago. It's a bittersweet kind of recognition, don't you think? Memory flooded back. The conference had been during her final semester, before everything changed. Her paper had received recognition, had even been published in a small academic data journal. That seemed like another lifetime now. You have an exceptional memory, Mr. Tanaka, she replied carefully. I remember talent, he said simply, which is why I find you here, with a mop instead of a degree, rather puzzling. Elara hesitated, then decided on honesty. Life doesn't always follow the path we plan. My sister and her husband were killed in a shuttle accident. My younger niece was badly injured. Someone needed to care for her, to work. My scholarship couldn't cover the medical debt. Tanaka listened intently, his expression thoughtful. So you sacrificed your education to support your family. I didn't see it as a sacrifice, Elara replied. Just a necessity. And yet you maintained your language skills. Impressive. Some passions don't die easily. A knock at the door interrupted them. Valerius poked his head in. Sorry to disturb, but we're ready to resume when you are. Tanaka nodded. We will be right there. As they walked back to the conference room, he spoke quietly. I believe, Ms. Vance, that this meeting has become far more interesting than I anticipated. By late afternoon, word had spread throughout Omnicorp Spire. Employees found excuses to walk past the conference room, stealing glances at the sanitation tech now seated beside the Neo-Tokian magnate. Whispers followed like ripples. Is that Elara, the night tech? She speaks high-register Tokian? What in the void is happening? When the meeting finally concluded, Elara felt drained but strangely energized. As the delegation prepared to leave, Kaito Tanaka shook hands with each executive. When he reached Elara, he clasped her hand in both of his. Ms. Vance, he said in English, your assistance today was invaluable. I look forward to continuing our discussions tomorrow. With that, he departed, leaving Elara standing in the atrium surrounded by stunned executives. Valerius cleared his throat. Well, Elara, that was unexpected. We'll need to talk about tomorrow's arrangements. Lyra stepped forward, her smile not reaching her eyes. Yes, what a lovely surprise. Where did you learn to parrot Neo-Tokian phrases so convincingly? Elara met her gaze steadily. The Lunar Academy, Ms. Lyra. I studied there before life took a different turn. She turned to Valerius. If you'll excuse me, I need to finish my shift. And with quiet dignity, Elara returned to her cleaning cart. But as she pushed it toward the transport tube, she held her head just a little higher than before. Behind her, the executives huddled in urgent conversation. Before the transport doors closed, she caught Lyra's final words. This changes nothing. She's still just the sanitation tech. But Elara knew better. Everything had changed. Morning light filtered through the auto-tinting window of Elara's HAB unit. She hadn't slept much. The events of yesterday kept replaying in her mind. The stunned faces, Tanaka's recognition, the sudden shift from invisibility to the center of attention. Her comlink had buzzed with messages from Jorik asking what happened. Elara rubbed her tired eyes and headed to the kitchen, where Kala sat, hunched over her data slate. "Morning," she mumbled. "Hey," Ilara replied, pouring herself a nutrient pack. "You're up early," Kala shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. Got an idea for a new decryption algorithm." A small smile touched Ilara's lips. It had been months since she'd seen Kala excited about anything. Before she could respond, a chime sounded at their door. Unusual for 0730. Ilara opened it to find a courier drone hovering, holding a sealed, iridescent envelope. "Delivery for Ilara Vance," a synthesized voice announced. Back in the kitchen, Kala raised an eyebrow. "What's that? Did you finally win the sector lottery?" Ilara examined the heavy paper envelope. No return address, just her name in elegant script. She slid her finger under the seal. "It's from Kaito Tanaka," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The magnate guy? From yesterday?" Ilara nodded, reading aloud. "Ms. Vance, your assistance yesterday was invaluable. I would be honored if you would attend today's meetings as my personal interpreter. A shuttle will await you at 09 o'clock. Respectfully, Kaito Tanaka." "Holy void," Kala breathed. "Ilara, that's... What are you going to wear?" The question crashed into her. What was she going to wear? Her wardrobe consisted of practical jumpsuits and worn synth cotton trousers. Nothing suitable for a high-stakes corporate meeting. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't exactly have executive attire." Kala was already reaching for her comlink. "Call Jorik. Maybe he knows someone your size. I'll check our emergency credit chip." Ilara put a hand on her arm. "Kala, no. That money is for actual emergencies." He looked up at her, suddenly serious. "Ilara, you've been working sanitation and transport gigs since the accident, so I could have a shot at a decent life. You gave up the Lunar Academy for me. If this isn't an emergency opportunity, I don't know what is." 2 hours later, Ilara stood in a neighbor's HAB unit as Yorik's cousin, a stylist for a high-end department store, made final adjustments to a simple but elegant dark gray suit. With low-heeled magnetic boots borrowed from the cousin and her hair swept into a neat bun, Ilara hardly recognized herself. "You look like you belong in that boardroom," Yorik had declared via holo call. "They won't know what hit them." As promised, a sleek black shuttle waited outside at precisely 09 o'clock. At Omnicorp, the atmosphere was electric. Ilara walked through the atrium where she had pushed her mop just yesterday, conscious of every eye that followed her. The elevator ride gave her moments to compose herself. The doors opened to the executive floor. Valerius and several executives huddled near the conference room, speaking in urgent whispers that ceased when they spotted her. "Ah, Ilara," Valerius said, false warmth coating his words. Behind him, Lyra's face was a mask of fury. "We've contacted a service for a professional AI translator," Valerius continued, "but they can't send a compatible unit until this afternoon. So for the morning session, Mr. Tanaka specifically requested Ms. Vance," interrupted a smooth voice. Kaito Tanaka approached from the conference room. "Good morning. Thank you for coming." Ilara shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for the invitation." Lyra stepped forward. "While we appreciate Ms. Vance's assistance yesterday, today's discussions involve complex financial terms. Perhaps it would be best to wait." Tanaka's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes cooled. Ms. Vance's understanding of both language and cultural context proved exceptional, unless she feels uncomfortable with financial terminology. He turned to Ilara. "I'm comfortable with the subject matter," she replied. "My studies included economic development in the Outer Rim." The morning meeting proceeded smoothly. Ilara translated with precision. During a break, Alara stepped into the hallway. Finn from IT approached. "Hey," he said, his smile genuine. "You're amazing in there." "Thanks," Alara replied. "It's been a while." Finn looked like he wanted to say more, but Lyra emerged. "Alara," she said with manufactured sweetness. "Could I borrow you for a quick word?" Finn retreated as Lyra guided Alara to a quiet corner. "You're quite the dark horse, aren't you?" Lyra said, her voice low. "From mop to meeting in 24 hours. Impressive." "I'm just helping out," Alara replied neutrally. Lyra's smile tightened. "Of course you are. But let's be clear. This is temporary. You're here because Tanaka thinks you're some kind of novelty. Once he's gone, things return to normal." Before Alara could respond, Lyra's comlink chimed. She glanced at the screen, then back at Alara with a strange expression. "Interesting," she murmured. "Lunar Academy, you said? Class of 2037? Unease flickered through Alara. "I didn't graduate. I had to withdraw." "Yes, family emergency. Very noble." Lyra's smile was all teeth now. "Well, we should get back." As they returned to the conference room, Alara noticed Lyra typing rapidly on her comlink, her face alight with purpose. Lyra sees a vulnerability to exploit, not a sacrifice to admire. It's easy to judge someone's path without knowing the mountains they had to move. When people feel threatened, their first instinct is often to tear others down. Have you ever seen someone weaponize another person's tragedy for their own gain? The afternoon session had just begun when Kaito Tanaka surprised everyone. "Before we continue," he said, "I would like to propose something." He turned to Alara. "Ms. Vance, your assistance has highlighted something my foundation has advocated for years, the overlooked value of cultural intelligence. I would like to offer you a grant. It would cover the completion of your education or fund a business initiative of your choosing. Your choice entirely." A stunned silence fell. "That's extremely generous," Alara managed, her mind reeling. "May I ask why?" Tanaka regarded her thoughtfully. "Because minds like yours are wasted pushing mops. Because you represent exactly the kind of talent my foundation seeks to elevate. And because, frankly, your insight has been more valuable than a dozen typical consultants." The offer hung in the air, shimmering with possibility. "I'll need time to consider," she said finally. Tanaka nodded. "Of course." As the meeting resumed, the executives now looked at Alara with new calculation. Wary, as if reassessing a potential threat. Nia was gathering her notes when her comlink buzzed with a message from Kala. "Check your inbox. Now." Stepping into a corner, she opened her email to find a message from Kala with a link to an audio file. Subject: Lyra recorded you. With shaking fingers, Nia put in her audio implant and pressed play. Her own voice emerged, distorted slightly. "Been underestimated my entire life. People see what they expect to see. When you're invisible long enough, you learn things they never notice." The recording cut off. Nia racked her brain. A brief conversation with Jorik during their break. A new email notification appeared. This one from the compliance department, requesting her immediate attendance regarding a matter of professional conduct. Cold realization washed over her. Lyra was making her move. The compliance office was sterile and impersonal. 2 officers sat behind a desk, with Lyra standing to the side, her expression one of rehearsed concern. Director Valerius hovered near the window. "Ms. Vance," began one officer, Serious concerns have been raised about potential conflicts of interest. Lyra stepped forward, data slate in hand. We have evidence suggesting Ms. Vance may have been less than honest. Additionally, there are concerns about her motivations. She played the audio clip. The words, stripped of context, sounded bitter and calculating. This, combined with inconsistencies in her claimed academic background. The door swung open. Kaito Tanaka stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "What is happening here?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Just a procedural review, Mr. Tanaka," Valerius jumped. "A procedural review of my personal interpreter, conducted without my knowledge, while I am still in your building." Tanaka's tone was mild, but his eyes were not. "Interesting procedure." He turned to Alara. "Are you being accused of something, Ms. Vance?" Before she could answer, Lyra interjected. "There are questions about Ms. Vance's qualifications." Tanaka's gaze swept the room, settling finally on Valerius. "I selected Ms. Vance based on her demonstrated skills, which have been exceptional. If there are questions about her qualifications, they should be directed to me." Just when you're about to be crushed by the system, a powerful ally steps in. But does that make it your victory? Or are you just a pawn in a bigger game? Does true strength come from fighting your own battles, or knowing when to accept help? The room fell silent. "Now," Tanaka continued smoothly, "I believe we have a final meeting scheduled. Ms. Vance, shall we?" Without waiting for a response, he held the door open for Alara. As they walked down the hallway, he spoke quietly. "Office politics can be vicious everywhere, it seems. Are you all right?" Alara nodded. "Thank you for intervening." "No thanks necessary. I dislike seeing talent undermined by pettiness." He paused. "My offer stands regardless of what occurs here. Remember that." The next morning, Alara was summoned to Valerius's office. She had spent a sleepless night talking through possibilities with Kala. Now, as she rode the transport tube to the executive floor, she felt strangely calm. Whatever happened, she had remembered who she was. Valerius's office was all synth glass and chrome. He greeted her with forced joviality. "Alara, thank you for coming. Yesterday was unfortunate. HR has been instructed to close any inquiries." Alara said nothing. "The fact is," Valerius continued, "you've demonstrated remarkable skills. We'd like to offer you a position as corporate cultural liaison." He slid a folder across the desk. "The salary is quite generous. Of course, you'd need to decline Mr. Tanaka's grant offer, conflict of interest, and all that." Alara opened the folder. The salary was substantial, but the job description was a token role, a way to keep her visible but contained. "May I have some time to consider?" she asked. Valerius's smile tightened. "Of course. Though I should mention, Kaito Tanaka signed the preliminary agreement this morning, with one condition." "What condition?" "That you be included in all future negotiations with his conglomerate." Valerius's tone was light, but his eyes were not. "So you see, your decision affects more than just your career." The implication was clear. Accept our offer, play by our rules, or risk tanking a major deal. "I'll let you know by tomorrow," Alara said, rising. As she turned to leave, Valerius added, "Oh, and Alara? You're relieved of your sanitation duties, effective immediately. Paid leave until you decide." News of the deal and its unusual condition spread like wildfire. Outside, she breathed deeply, her comlink vibrating with a text from an unknown number. "Sector Alpha Gardens, Waterfall Pavilion, 13 Étoiles." Kaito Tanaka was waiting on a bench. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I thought a neutral location might be welcome." "You put me in your contract," Elara said finally. "Why?" Tanaka considered her question. "Because talent should be nurtured, not exploited. Because I recognized something in you that reminded me of my own journey." "Your journey?" Elara asked, surprised. A smile touched his lips. "I wasn't always the head of a conglomerate. When I first studied at the London Consortium, people mocked my accent, my manners. I was the Neo-Tokian before I was Kaito. That's why I tested your boardroom, to see who would treat my words with respect, even when they didn't understand them. You didn't just translate my words, Ms. Vance. You preserved their dignity. That is rare." He turned to face her. "Omnicorp offered you a position, I assume?" Elara nodded. "Corporate Cultural Liaison. It's a token role, a way to keep me visible but powerless." "And my offer? Have you considered it?" "I have," she admitted. "But I worry." "About strings attached?" he finished. "There are none. The grant is yours regardless, though I hope you aim higher than being Omnicorp's token success story." He gazed across the gardens. "I would remember that true power comes not from titles, but from being irreplaceable. If you join Omnicorp, do so on your terms. If you don't, build something they will wish they had supported from the beginning." They offered her a golden cage, a promotion designed to neutralize her. But she chose the open sky instead, siding with the man who saw her potential. It's a powerful choice: comfort and compromise, or freedom and uncertainty. Which path holds more power in the long run? Kala was coding when Elara returned home. "How'd it go with the magnate?" she called out. Elara dropped onto the couch beside her. "Omnicorp offered me a job," she began, "and Kaito offered me a grant. Either way, things are going to change." She hesitated. "I need to know something. After the accident, I always thought your recovery was just physical. Was there more to it?" Kala's gaze dropped to her hands. "I was depressed," she finally said. "Watching you give up everything for me, I couldn't handle the pressure, the guilt. It wasn't just physical, Elara. I was broken." She looked up, her enhanced eyes shimmering. "You were working 3 shifts. How could I add to that?" Elara put an arm around her shoulders. "Whatever I decide, it's for us. For the life we both deserve." The following morning, Elara walked into Omnicorp Spire. She ignored the stairs and headed straight for Valerius's office. "Elara, have you made a decision?" he greeted her. "I have," she replied, remaining standing. "I'm declining your offer." Valerius's smile faltered. "May I ask why?" "Because it's not what I'm worth," Elara said simply. "And because I've accepted a better one." Valerius's expression hardened. "Tanaka's grant. You'd throw away a career here for charity?" "Not charity," she corrected him. "Investment. And not just his grant. This morning, I accepted a position with the Tanaka Foundation as Director of Cultural Strategy for their new Inter-System Division." The shock on Valerius's face was almost worth the years of invisibility. "You can't. What about our contract? He insisted you be part of negotiations." "And I will be," Elara assured him. From the other side of the table, she turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Valerius. Lyra manipulated that recording and you knew it. Remember that when she tries the same tactics against you someday." The news of Elara's new position spread quickly. As she cleaned out her locker, Lyra appeared. "Quite the Cinderella story," she remarked coldly. "The sanitation tech becomes a princess." "Is there something you wanted, Lyra?" "Just to understand how a cleaner with a half-finished degree managed to charm her way into a director position." Elara closed her locker and turned to face Lyra. Fully. You tried to erase me, she said quietly. You saw me as nothing, and it didn't work. She stepped closer. I won't destroy you, Lyra. I'll do something worse. I'll outlive you in this place. Long after you've moved on, they'll still be talking about the day a sanitation tech silenced a boardroom. Lyra stared, momentarily stunned into silence. You don't have to like me, Alara continued. But you won't erase me. Not anymore. You hold the power to utterly destroy your enemy. They deserve it. But Alara chose a different path. Not revenge, but a demonstration of superior character. Is that true power? The ability to rise above and let their own actions be their undoing? Or is it a missed opportunity for karmic justice? What would you have done